It started with the sound of engines, loud, arrogant, and careless. Ethan Miller stood at the edge of his land watching the bulldozers grind toward the old wooden bridge that connected his fields to the main road. That bridge had stood there for nearly 40 years, built by Ethan's own hands, plank by plank. It wasn't just wood and nails, it was his lifeline, his pride, and the only route connecting the entire neighborhood to the city beyond the river. But the men in suits didn't see it that way. "Old junk needs to go," one of them laughed. "We'll replace it with a modern road once we take care of this mess." Ethan didn't say a word. He just stood there, silent, the morning sun glinting off his weather-worn face. They thought he was powerless, just an old farmer with no say in what happens to his land. When the first beam snapped and the bridge collapsed into the river, everyone clapped, except Ethan. He turned and walked away without a word, a faint smile forming beneath his gray beard. That evening, the sky darkened as a storm rolled in. In the distance, the rich neighborhood's lights began to flicker. It was the same place that had slowly crept closer to Ethan's property over the years. Big houses, shiny cars, and people who looked down on him like he was part of the dirt he worked in. But what they didn't realize was simple. That bridge wasn't just his. The road beyond it, the one they all used to get to the city, their schools, their offices, was also part of Ethan's private land. A deal signed decades ago, back when nobody cared about boundaries, gave him ownership of the only access route. And tonight, he decided to remind them. The next morning, chaos erupted. Cars lined up, engines roaring, horns blaring. No one could leave the neighborhood. At the entrance stood a freshly painted metal gate with a large wooden sign that read, "Private property, no entry." Residents gathered in disbelief. Some shouted, some tried calling the county office. But Ethan had already filed the paperwork. Legally, the road was his, and until further notice, it was closed to everyone. From his porch, he watched them through his binoculars. Tiny figures pacing, frustrated, helpless. He took a slow sip of coffee, savoring the quiet. By noon, the same officials who tore down his bridge showed up, sweating under the sun. "Mr. Miller, this is ridiculous," one of them barked. "You can't just shut down access for everyone." Ethan calmly handed him a folder. Inside were old maps, deeds, and legal documents. "You destroyed my bridge," he said evenly. "You cut off my land from the world, so I did the same." The man's voice faltered. We didn't know." Ethan smiled faintly. "You didn't care to know." Over the next few days, desperation grew. Groceries couldn't be delivered. Kids missed school. Even emergency vehicles had to find longer, costlier detours. The same people who mocked Ethan now stood outside his gate, begging him to open it. One morning, the richest man in the area, Mr. Doyle, drove up in his shiny SUV, looking humbled for the first time in his life. "Ethan," he said, removing his sunglasses, "we made a mistake. We'll rebuild your bridge, better than before. Just, please open the road." Ethan looked him in the eye. "You destroyed something you didn't build. You laughed at something you didn't understand. Tell me, Mr. Doyle, what's a road worth if it leads to nowhere?" Doyle had no answer. After a long silence, Ethan spoke again. "I'll reopen the road," he said, "but from now on, you'll pay a toll, $5 per car. Every penny will go to rebuilding what you tore down." The neighborhood agreed instantly. Within a week, construction workers, hired by the same people who once mocked him, were rebuilding the bridge under Ethan's supervision. This time it was stronger, wider, built of steel and stone instead of fragile wood. Ethan stood watching as the final beam was laid across the river. The sound of hammers and drills filled the air. The same sound that once tore his bridge apart now echoed to rebuild it. When the first car crossed the new bridge, Ethan didn't smile. He just nodded quietly, collected the toll, and went back to his porch. Word spread across the county about the old man who owned the only road. Reporters came, curious about the story. Ethan gave just one line for the cameras. They tore down my bridge thinking they were powerful. But power isn't about destroying. It's about knowing when to stand your ground. That evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, the bridge shimmered in golden light. Cars passed one by one, each dropping a small coin into the toll box, a silent tribute to the man they once underestimated. Ethan leaned back on his chair, listening to the hum of engines over the bridge. Every sound reminded him of one thing. Respect costs nothing, but losing it can cost everything. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "They thought they took something from me, but all they did was build my legacy."